the cloud, and the recording has begun. Welcome everyone. My name is Helen Bukulmez, and today I would like to share with you some very important information. I know things are truly heartbreaking, and we all pray for peace as soon as possible. My name is Helen Bukulmez. I am an attorney here in Kentucky, and first I would like to make sure that I am disclosing some important information. For example, nothing on this presentation is legal advice. This is general information and it may be incomplete. We don't have a lot of time to go through every little detail that we need to know about this information, so please keep that in mind. For legal advice, you must consult an attorney, provide specific information about you and your background, and speak with an immigration attorney privately to protect your information and privacy. This presentation will focus on temporary protected status that has been published and in effect by April 19, 2022. The law, the general information, and everything that will be discussed here on this presentation is subject to change in time. Keep that in mind. So I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves, please. Thank you very much. And Paul, if you have someone who can interpret this very quickly, perhaps we can start with that. Is that okay?
Yes, that is fine. Значить, що вона тут каже? Вона привітала себе, каже, що я є Єлена, я є адвокат в штаті Кентакі. І цю презентацію, яку я хочу з вами поділитися, вона є презентація про temporary protection, це виходить тимчасовий статус біженців. І це не є легальний совіт по-англійськи. Для цього вам буде потрібно сісти з імміграційним адвокатом, щоб мати, поділитися свою лічною інформацією і так вести діло. Це якби інформація, яка поможе вам начати це.
Very good. Thank you so much. Today's agenda, first, I'd like to start with a prayer for Ukraine, and we're lucky to have our pastor in Gary County, Kentucky today with us. It is in fact due to their good work that we're doing this presentation tonight. We'll talk about intent and American visas. We're going to talk about those who don't qualify for TPS. We're going to talk about those who do qualify for TPS, and we're going to allow you to ask questions at the end. Paul?
Значить, ми, як завжди, почнемо з молитви, і брат пастор буде зачати цю молитву. І ми вдячні, що в нас є такі можливості сьогодні. І якби по списку, то ми будемо дивитися на американські візи intent, і потім ті, хто впадають в цю категорію, які можуть мати після 11 квітня, 11 квітня, і потім подивимося варіант, який не зможе дати свій якби option, чи ті, хто не впадають в цю категорію. Потім temporary protected status для українців. І в кінці ми зробимо питання, в кого які. І це буде внизу у вас на екрані в чаті. Ви можете писати свої питання.
Thank you. And I understand it's more difficult to hear the translation. It's probably because you have a microphone system there. So we're doing the best that we can. I apologize about that. But Paul is kindly interpreting for us the best way that he can. First, I'd like to ask Pastor Peter Zabolowski to start with a prayer. So perhaps our prayers will reach Ukraine today. Pastor? And Paul, if you can unmute so we can hear him.
Благословення Боже. Благослови наше общення в цьому собранні, Боже. Благослови, Господи, дай ясность, Боже, в цих вопросах, які сьогодні так необхідні, Боже наш Господь. Благослови эту женщину, Господи, яка сьогодні, Боже, желає добровольно, Господі, поділитися своїм опитом Божим. Благослови її, Боже, во ім'я Ісуса Христа. Да буде милость Твоя над всіма нами, щоб нам, Господь Ісус, радувався, щоб ці, Господі, справи, які сьогодні відкриті, Боже, і друзів наших, які сьогодні серед нас, щоб вони мали легальний статус, Господі, в цій страні і могли, Господі, розвиватися і духовно, і фізично, і тілесно, Господі, і матеріально, Боже, Ісус. Ми благословляємо їх іменем Твоїм, да прославиться Твоє святе ім'я, Отець, Син і Дух Святий. Амінь.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. I'd like to thank our Ukrainian church in Lancaster, Kentucky. I'd like to thank Whole Latte Love in Lancaster, Kentucky, and to all our attendees today who are here to learn this information. Hopefully we can help each other. We can help another person today.
Я хотіла би подякувати пастору з церкви в Ланкастері, тут української. І також хотіла подякувати хазяйки з Whole Latte Love, це кафе теж в Ланкастері. І хотіла би подякувати всім, хто знаходиться сьогодні на цьому відео, що ви тут є присутні, і ми можемо це сьогодні зробити.
Okay, Paul, I think when you came close to the computer, it became much better. So hopefully it'll get better. Thank you so much. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, not much because today is not about me, but I want you to know why this information is valuable, why I may be the person who can help you. I am the child of immigrants from Montenegro. My great-grandparents escaped war in Montenegro and they found safety in Turkey. I grew up in Turkey and I came to the US to learn English. And I worked really hard, just like you are doing today, and I became a lawyer. I'm a proud American lawyer today. My practice areas are immigration and car accidents in the US. My contact information is very easy, Helen at helenforamerica.com.
Всіх привітаю ще раз. Я просто хотіла би трошки поділитися за себе. Хоча ця бесіда, чи цей мітинг, він не є про мене, він є про вас. Але тимчасово я хочу поділитися, що я є сама іммігрантка. І приїхала я з міста Монтенегро, проживала в Турції, країна Чорномор'я. Проживала в Турції, приїхала в Штати, вивчила англійську і старалася дуже прилежно, щоб вивчити англійську мову, стала адвокатом і спеціалізую в імміграції і в аваріях, в случаях аварії. І якщо комусь потрібна інформація знизу на екрані з правої сторони, це буде дуже просто, там електронна адреса.
Thank you, Paul. Next, we talk about intent and American visas. I wanted to talk about this because some people may be making mistakes in applying certain visas, and that might actually affect them later. In the US, the visas can be categorized into two categories. One is immigrant intent, and the other is non-immigrant intent. For example, if your intention is to go back home to Ukraine after the war, hopefully it will be over soon, we're all praying for that, then you don't have immigrant intent. Your intent is to be safe and to be in a good place until the war is over. You can fairly say that you have a non-immigrant intent. If you have a non-immigrant intent, you can apply for and use tourist visas, for example. If you have a non-immigrant intent, for example, you can apply and use student visas to learn English. If your intention is immigrant, which means your intention is to come to the United States and stay here and start a new life here. Work here, live here, send your kids to school, learn English, then you have immigrant intent. If you have immigrant intent, it may be a problem if you apply for a tourist visa. If you have immigrant intent, you can apply for other visas. For example, green card. For example, if you have a parent who's an American citizen, if you have a spouse, if you have a child over the age of 21, if you have someone who is eligible to apply for you, you can apply for green card, or you can apply for lottery. We call that green card lottery. You can also, for example, if you have a relationship and if you have decided to apply for marriage, you can also apply for a fiancé visa, although initially it may not be similar to green card. It's still going to allow you to come to the US and get married within 90 days. There are employment-based visas, for example, H-1B, L-1, OP, or PERM. Some of them are immigrant intent, some of them are not. And finally, there's asylum. Asylum is more tricky because asylum is granted to those who are fearing and escaping persecution. And it needs to be either that the government is persecuting you based on your nationality, your religion, your political beliefs, or similar categories, or that you are being persecuted against, but the government is not able to help you. In the case of war, it's very difficult to establish asylum because the government itself is not necessarily in a place to protect you. It's fighting a war. So in short, this can get very complicated, but in short, if you have immigrant intent, if you apply for a tourist visa, it may not be successful. If you use your tourist visa, but you have an immigrant intent, it may be a problem later on. So I just wanted everyone to know a little bit about immigrant and non-immigrant intent. I know this was a very long explanation, Paul. If you'd like to just take bits and pieces of what I have explained, you're welcome to do that.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I will do my best to explain bits and pieces, and I'm glad you recognize that. If we can make the explanations just a tad bit shorter, I'll be able to translate it more accurately.
Yes, let's say this. I think this is the most important part. If you have an immigrant intent, be careful about using non-immigrant visas. If you have immigrant intent, then you can go ahead and use immigrant visas.
Okay, thank you. Значить, то, що вона тут розказує, є різні візи, і вони діляться, виходить, на дві категорії. Є намірення іммігранта категорія і ненамірення іммігранта категорія. Значить, якщо ненамірення іммігранта, це, виходить, або студентська віза, або туристична віза. Намірення іммігранта, віза, наприклад, грін-карта, це яка ти виграв через лотерею, чи батьки є, чи діти є, чи є супруг, або на з'єднання сім'ї, або employment-based, це якщо ви чисто робочу візу берете і думаєте колись. То саме важливо, якщо ви маєте візу, скажімо, візу туристичну, наприклад, чисто приїхали сюди посітити Америку, то це може стати проблемою в майбутньому, якщо ви хочете зробити намірення іммігранта помінятися. То в цих питаннях треба буде, щоб був адвокат, щоб ці питання всі рішити. І ще є, наприклад, асайлом. Асайлом – це коли ви вже біженець від держави і коли вас пресують по релігіозним, скажімо, питанням.
Thank you, Paul. And one of our friends here has said in the chat that if you get closer to the microphone and if it's not moving, it may help for them to hear it, because I know you're trying to explain it to everybody at the church, and we're also trying to help. Yes, I hear you much better now. Thank you so much.
I'll just have myself turn this way.
Okay, all right. So let's start with if somebody does not qualify for TPS. And we'll talk about TPS in a lot of details. So just hang in there as I'm trying to, all right, I'm going to try to mute somebody who is not on mute. Let's see.
Якщо
Who
можна, будь ласка, виключити мікрофон.
all right, everyone, please mute your microphone. I
Якщо
think,
можна, будь ласка, виключіть свої мікрофони.
all right.
Дякую.
Please mute if you are joining this call. If you're talking, nobody can hear me. So please mute your microphone. That way everyone can hear me. Thank you so much. All right. All right. We still have someone who has not muted. Who is that? I'm trying to see everybody. All right, everybody, please mute your line so that everyone can hear me. I think I got everybody. So, all right, if someone, all right, I'm going to go back. If you don't qualify for TPS, then please, if you're in Ukraine, or if you're in Europe, if you're in Turkey, I know Turkey is allowing a lot of Ukrainian nationals to be there right now. Please find safety first. And then once you find safety, locate a US consulate near you. If you already have a valid visa, such as tourist visa, B1 or B2, be careful with intent. If you are coming to the US to establish a life here and not to go back, and if you use your visa with an immigrant intent, and if your visa is tourist visa, later on you may have problems. If you already have another visa, work visa, fiancé visa, still be careful about the intent. I am telling you these things so that you don't run into issues after you come to the US. If you already have an application, it may be green card, it may be your daughter, your father, your spouse, you can ask the consulate to expedite the process, and you can ask for help in the US for congressional assistance. These are complicated terms, perhaps, especially for those non-native speakers. But I just want you to at least hear about these concepts before you use your visa, if you have one. If you are not in the US, and if you don't have any visas, there are options for you to consider. First, please find safety. It's perhaps not safe in Ukraine anymore. Please go to Poland, go to Turkey, go to any country that is accepting immigrants at this time. And then definitely locate the US consulate and consider these visas. B1 or B2 is a tourist visa. You can apply for a fiancé visa, and fiancé visa is given to those who already have a relationship with someone who's a US citizen and who intends to marry that person in the next 90 days after you enter. If you qualify for an employment-based visas and you have found a job in the US already, that might be an option. Asylum is still possible in some cases, but it's not definite in terms of an answer. If you go to a country where you can enter the US safely, please do so safely. You may be able to be given a humanitarian parole. It's not a visa, it's not a status, but it will allow you to come into the US safely if you are given a humanitarian parole. Once you enter, you may be able to apply for a work permit. It depends on your specific circumstances. At this point, we're going to talk about TPS next. It's very limited. I'm hoping there will be more relief in the future for those who are not in the US, but I don't think we will have anything else. If you are in the US and if you are a victim of a crime, you might be able to file for a visa and later a green card. Again, these are very complicated, complex concepts, but I just wanted you to at least hear about them. And for purposes of Paul's translation, I'd like to do a very short summary. find safety first. Go to another country, Poland, Turkey, any country that is accepting immigrants right now. If you have a valid visa, for example, tourist visa, you can use that to come to the US, but be careful with intent. If you already have an application that you had submitted before all of this started, ask for expedited process. Otherwise, you have options. You have tourist visa that you can apply for if your intent is to go back after the war. You have family-based if you have a family who is a US citizen. You have employment-based visas. You have asylum possible in some circumstances. You have the possibility of going to a bordering country like Canada or Mexico and ask for humanitarian parole. Hopefully, we'll have more future relief. And if you're in the US and if you're a victim of a crime, you can apply for a visa and later perhaps a green card. If you are in a relationship and if you intend to get married to an American citizen, you can also ask for a fiancé visa. Paul, this is very long, but just go through my outline here and just interpret whatever you remember.
All right, thank you. Ті, хто не підходять під статус для TPS, значить temporary protection, є пару варіантів. Значить, якщо ви знаходитеся в Україні, скажімо, наприклад, якщо у вас ще є родичі чи сім'я на Україні, які знаходяться, то перший село знайде сейф, значить, щоб було небезпечно. Знайде сейфті, і якщо у вас є віса, скажімо, B1 чи B2, це туристична віса, якщо вона у вас є і вона ще годна, ви можете ту візу використовувати для того, щоб прилетіти в Америку чи приїхати, як там виходить, але треба бути дуже обережним з тим, коли ви говорите своє намірення, що ви маєте робити з цією візою. Намірення при в'їзді. Так, намірення при в'їзді. Значить, ще один варіант, якщо ви вже подали колись аплікацію на візу, і вона якби в процесі, ви можете запропонувати, щоб вам ускорили цей процес, консула ви можете запросити, щоб вони ускорили цей процес. Якщо у вас цього немає, ще є варіанти. Є B1, B2 віза, яку дають на час. Є візи, які asylum ще в деяких випадках дають, і asylum це буде притулок чи біженство, то його теж можна використовувати. Деякі страни, ще як Польща, Турція, приймають людей. Значить, ще є фіанси віза, це буде, коли, як це буде? Якщо невеста чи жених і є намірення женитися, то вони це теж ці питання роздивляються.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, so the next one is temporary protected status. We usually call this TPS, and thank God, luckily, the US government has designated a TPS for the Ukrainian nationals. So this makes me very happy, given that we're going through a very difficult time. I am going to go through some eligibility information. This is not all the information you need to know, but these are probably some of the most important information. One, to qualify, you must be a Ukrainian national. That means you either have a passport or some type of evidence that you're a Ukrainian citizen. You must already be in the US. Unfortunately, if you're not in the US, you cannot apply for TPS. You must demonstrate that you have been in the US at least since April 11. What does that mean? Well, the good news is it was March 1st initially, and the government extended that to April 11th. So if you have come into the US in February, March, after the war started, or until April 11th, then you may qualify for the TPS. If you came in on April 12th, you don't qualify. And how do you prove that? This is very important. Please keep every single piece of paper you have. Take a picture, keep that in your phone, and keep the paper file, keep everything. Because you must demonstrate that you have been in the country since at least April 11th. So this is very important. It can be anything before April 11th, but if you came in April 12th, 13th, I know the language is there a little bit confusing, but April 11th is the cutoff date. Whether the US government is going to adjust that and make it even further. For example, originally it was March 1st, and now we have April 11th. As of now, we don't have any indication that they're going to change that. So if you came in on April 12th, 13th, or ever since then it's very important for you to understand that you do not qualify for TPS. How do you prove that you came into the country on April 11th or before? You prove that with flight itineraries. You prove that with bills or posts or letters, messages, anything that you can find. If you came into the country with the humanitarian parole, that may serve as an evidence to show that you came in at the right time. If you have an I-94 arrival record, that may also help you to prove that you have been in the country at least since April 11th. The other requirement in terms of the date, you must demonstrate presence on the date of designation. So you have 2 dates that you have to show, and you have to show with documentation. It cannot just be putting the dates down. It needs to be that you have some type of documentation to prove it. Save every little piece of paper, grocery receipts, messages, if you have checked in somewhere, itineraries, hotel receipts, affidavits from friends and family or pastors. Please keep everything. Keep a paper copy and also keep an electronic copy in case you lose the paper copy somewhere. Next, you must be admissible. For example, there is going to be a background and criminal check, and you have to disclose your criminal history anywhere. It can be in the US, it can be in Ukraine, it can be in Turkey, anywhere you have been in the world, you have to disclose your criminal history. And if you're not admissible, you will not be given the TPS status, or you must apply for a waiver. Next, every individual must apply for their own, including the children. So some applications you can just apply for yourself and then your children would get it. But in this case, every single person have to apply for themselves. Your prior entries into the US is also going to be important. If you came to the US before as a tourist or as a worker, and then if you overstayed your visa in the past, you may need a waiver. It may be a problem. So in terms of making this a little bit easier for Paul, I'm going to just go through and say you must be a Ukrainian national. You must be in the US at the time you're applying. You must show that you came in on or before April 11th. You must show that you were present here with some type of documentation on the date of designation. You must be admissible. You cannot have serious criminal history. And if you do, you may have to work with an attorney to see if you are eligible for a waiver. Next, every person must apply for their own, even the children, and your prior entries into the US, your immigration history in the US is still very important. Paul, I know this is another long one, but you can go through my outline and just take whatever you remember.
Значить, спочатку вам треба бути
мати гражданство чи як буде гражданство? Громадянство України, значить, це ви отримуєте паспорт. Слідуюче, ви повинні бути в Україні для того, щоб попадати під цей статус. Значить, те, що ви в Україні, ви повинні доказати це. І саме ліпше, як це можна доказати, це мати свої квітки чи білети, коли ви перелітали, любі документи, все зберігати. Значить, любі біли, ресіти, письма, смс-ки, меседжі, даже список перельоту, паспорта, штампи, I-94, arrival record теж. Всі оці бумажки, чим тільки можна, тим те зберегти, щоб показати, що ви тут були. Значить, слідуюче, треба показати, що ви були в Штатах до 11 квітня, чи до 11 квітня, чи на це число, треба доказати, що це ви були, і тоді ви зможете під цей статус підпадати. Слідуюче, must be admissible, це означає, що у вас должен бути чистий рекорд, значить ніякої кримінальної, скажімо, там історії. Якщо є, це може усложнити ситуацію, звісно, і в тому випадку треба буде працювати з адвокатом. Every individual must apply. Значить, кожен должен сам подавати аплікацію за себе і так само за дітей, на кожного окремо, виходить. І якщо вам треба буде показати ваші, якщо ви колись були в гостях в Америці, вам треба буде це показати. І якщо ви колись мали туристичну візу і, скажімо, перетримали, чи ваш візит в Америці він був довше, ніж ця віза, то це теж може усложнити перепровіряти. Go ahead, Helen, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And once you apply and receive temporary protected status, you get to have the right to live in the US legally for 18 months. That means October 2023. You have a right to seek employment authorization and work in the US and afford and support your family. You can apply online or you can apply with a paper file. And we'll talk more about the filing fees, but right now, to make it affordable, the filing fees are $50 per person, plus $85 for biometrics fee per person. In some cases, fee waiver is available, but if you file online, it's not available. Paul?
Значить, як можна, що робить цей temporary protection status? Цей статус, він дає можливість, щоб проживати в Америці легально 18 місяців, тобто до октября 2023 року. І ще що, ви можете легально шукати роботу, у вас буде якби право на роботу шукати в Америці, в US, і це можна зробити або онлайн на інтернеті, або на бумазі, і це буде коштувати filing fee, тобто, щоб подати ці бумаги, значить на бумагах буде $50 за аплікацію, і якщо це робити онлайн, так само біометрична буде також $50. В деяких випадках є, що можна це якби waiver, це значить, що можна буде його, що вони повернуть ці гроші назад, і воно буде за безплатно. Ну, якщо робити це онлайн, то цього waiver не буде.
Okay, very good. And the good news is the application process starts today. So if you wanted to start applying today, you could. If you tried yesterday, you couldn't. So today is the first day, and I'm so happy to be talking with you about this.
Значить, сьогодні перший день, який добра новина, що сьогодні перший день, в якому можна починати цю реєстрацію
або на була, або на версії онлайн. Но якщо ви вчора пробували, то це воно не дозволяло. Сьогодні перший день.
Thank you, Paul. There is some important information I want you to have. Sometimes people hear gossip from one another and they just create information that is simply not true. For example, sometimes you'll hear people say, if you disclose you have children back home, they won't give it to you. Or that if you were married to you, they won't give it to you. It is not true. Please do not listen to people who are not lawyers or authorized representatives. Do not hide relevant information and do not provide false information. Unless an attorney is telling you that certain information is problematic, please disclose everything honestly. In most circumstances, honestly disclosing all kinds of details about your life may be forgiven, but if you intentionally provide misleading, incomplete, or false information, it is almost guaranteed that you may be not only denied, but also placed in deportation proceedings. This is just a general information. So do not hide relevant information, do not provide false information, and do not make assumptions. Do not act upon the advice of anyone but a licensed immigration attorney or authorized representatives. Do not work with notarios or non-attorneys or people who are not authorized representatives. If your address changes, you must update the USCIS within 10 days of your address change. And this is very important. I understand you're coming from a war zone. You may be staying with relatives today, and you may have to move and live somewhere else. If you do, it's no problem at all, but you must go online. There is a form and fill that out and say, I have moved. That form is AR-11. And if you reach out to me and our firm, I'm happy to share that form with you, but do not forget to change your address, because if you do, you may never get your TPS status or the paperwork necessary for your immigration process. Keep every little piece of paper, credit card statements, letters. Please do not throw away anything. Even if you go to a hospital, a grocery store, library, you check in, your flight itinerary, emails and messages, anything you have. Again, I want to repeat this. Keep an electronic copy, which means take a picture of it, save it on your phone or in an email address. Even if you lose your phone, if you send it to yourself as an email, it will be there. And keep several copies of the paper documents. Perhaps send it to a friend that you trust. If you don't have documents, sometimes it may be a problem. Again, for purposes of Paul's interpretation, I think the summary is going to be enough. I would just add that you must update your address within 10 days after you move. Please, please do not forget this.
Значить,
Paul, can you get closer to the microphone?
yeah, is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Значить, коли ви даєте аплікацію на цей статус, дуже важливо, щоб ви не здержували ніякої інформації, коли ви працюєте своїм адвокатом. І за того, що зараз, наприклад, є багато слухів таких, що, наприклад, якщо ви скажете, що ваші там залишилися діти на Україні, вам, можливо, не дадуть цей статус, чи ще такі подібні, то не є правда. І я дуже вам рекомендувала би, щоб ви цього не робили. Не стримуйте ніякої інформації за вашу ситуацію. Не давайте фальшиву інформацію і не робіть assumptions. Не робіть свої якісь висновки. То, що якщо я це стримаю, чи те, воно може бути по-іншому чи по-другому, то ви не робіть цього. Ще одне дуже важливо, щоб вам, якщо ви
якщо ви переїхали, наприклад, ми розуміємо, що ви переїхали з України, там де є воєнна зона, ми це розуміємо. Але якщо ви переїхали до своєї сім'ї чи до якихось рідних, близьких друзів, і вам потрібно переїхати в якесь інше місто, вам потрібно через 10, ну, щоб, як перекладати, після переїзду до 10 днів, що вам треба сообщити на інтернеті, онлайн, що ви поміняли свою адресу. І то є саме важливіше, що я зараз сказав би з цього слайду. І в любі питання дуже важливо, щоб це брати, совітуватись з тим, хто в цьому працює, імміграційний адвокат чи тому подібне, не пользувати якісь нотарії чи той, хто не є адвокат. І ще одне, так же само знову це якби повторно, щоб зберігати любі документи, любі бумажки, чи то ви ходили в магазин і отримали ресіп, чи то ви ходили в бібліотеку, брали там, що там ваше ім'я, коли ви прийшли, коли ви були, от всі бумажки, вони можуть в цьому зробити.
Okay, thank you, Paul. All right. For those of you who are attorneys who don't practice immigration, or the community leaders who want to help their communities, thank you. It's a very selfless act when you try to help our immigrant friends to get their TPS. However, if you do not regularly practice immigration law, just a small mistake can make this process very difficult for the immigrants. And this is not a monetary matter. This is someone's life. Please proceed with caution. If you don't practice immigration law, make sure to have a mentor or some type of supervision with an immigration attorney before you submit any application on behalf of an immigrant. Eligibility is just as important as the forms and submissions. And eligibility is basically asking the question, does this person qualify? Is he a Ukrainian national? Was he here on April 11th or before? Was he here on the date of designation? Is he otherwise admissible? An admissibility issue is probably the biggest eligibility issue. And so just make sure it's not just the forms, it's not just the filing fees and the documents that needs to be sent, but they need to be questioned to make sure that they are eligible and admissible before their application can be sent in. So this is not to say that you shouldn't do it, but please practice with caution as you're trying to help. Sometimes we hurt immigrants because this is their dream, this is their safety. For now, this is their home. And Paul, since this is just for the attorneys, you don't need to interpret this unless you want to.
I'll interpret it. Значить, якщо хтось, хто мене чує, і, наприклад, ви є вже адвокат, але ви не практикуєте в тому по імміграції, наприклад, то просто хотіла би сказати, щоб ви були дуже обережні в цьому, бо то не є случай, щоб просто заробити гроші, а то є чиєсь життя, яке ви можете змінити якимось необережним питанням. І просто хотіли би нагадати всім, навіть якщо ви комусь допомагаєте там заповнити якісь бумаги, то щоб перше, ніж не подавати аплікацію, щоб ви самі уточнили, чи вони є, чи вони підходять перш ніж під цей статус. Мається в виду, що вони мають паспорт український і тому подібне. То просто хотіла би нагадати, що то є життя людське, яке ми міняємо, і якщо воно не зроблено правильно, воно може повредити. Go ahead, Helen.
Thank you, Paul. And also for Gary County, Kentucky Ukrainian Church, as soon as I get back from Dallas, Texas, I would like to look at some possible dates to come in and do a legal clinic where everyone can fill out their own forms and I can look over them. Again, I cannot give legal advice, but at least I can be there to see if they're eligible, if their forms are correct, if they have prepared their filing fees correctly. So I'm happy to do that after I get back from Dallas, sometime either late April or early May.
І для тих, хто знаходиться тут в Garrett County, в цьому зібранні, я коли повернувся з Техасу, в мене є бажання, і ми можемо потім пізніше поговорити, щоб назначити дати, які ми можемо зробити якби легальну клініку. Я не можу давати легальний совіт просто так, але я можу хоч бути присутня, коли ви заповняєте свої бумаги, і щоб просто передивитися, щоб у вас все було правильно зроблено.
Very good. Thank you, Paul. Every case is different. Just because somebody applied and they got it doesn't mean you qualify. So please, if you hear from others, that's just gossip. They're talking about their own process. It may not be applicable to you. Your case, when you send the documents, is not accepted until you receive a receipt number from the USCIS. Once it's accepted and you have a receipt number, you can use that receipt number to track the status of your case. If you receive a request for evidence, for example, if you send in your forms and then you send your filing fees, documents necessary, and later on, you receive another letter from the USCIS that says, we need this, we need that document, we need evidence of your entry. Please do not ignore. If you do not respond, you may be denied. And please respond in a timely manner. Again, save an electronic and paper copy of everything you send to the USCIS. And let's say that you prepared it. In fact, I have a few here. Let's say that you have prepared your documents and they're ready to be sent. Do not send it until you make a complete copy for yourself. Keep the copies, send the originals to the USCIS. Very important. Also, if you get any documents from the USCIS, keep a copy. If you have any documents that you have sent them, keep a copy, because if the USCIS says that you didn't send a document, if you didn't keep a copy of everything, you cannot prove that you did. So please keep a copy if you decide to do this yourself. If you have an attorney and your attorney does this for you, they will likely keep a copy of everything they have done anyway. Once you apply, your case is accepted, you receive a receipt number. Next step is everything is accepted, is going to be the biometrics appointment. And the biometrics appointment is for fingerprints, pictures, and signatures. Do not miss this biometrics appointment. And this is another reason why your address is very important. If you change your address, please update it with the USCIS. Even when you do update it, sometimes they make a mistake and send it to your old address. So whoever was there, please make sure that they give you your paperwork if you do move. Hopefully you don't have to move. That would be the best ideal situation. But I understand in these circumstances, you may have to. But all these receipt numbers, case details, biometrics notices will likely come in the mail to your address. And your address is the only way you can keep a track of this. Paul?
Значить, дуже важливо, щоб ви розуміли, що кожна ситуація, вона є різна. І якщо в когось вийшло по одному, то не значить, що у вас вийде так само. І, наприклад, якщо в когось по одному вийшло, важливо, щоб ви брали інформацію від адвоката, який має ліцензію на те. Тільки тоді, коли ваш кейс, ваше діло буде прийнято, ви получите номер, якби бумага з номером, яка скаже, що ваш кейс був прийнятий. Тільки тоді, як ви получите цей номер, ви можете онлайн провіряти статус свого кейсу. Наприклад, чи там є якісь запроси, чи там є щось, що змінилося, чи їм ще щось потрібно від вас. Ви можете це провіряти. Потім, якщо вам будуть щось висилати, наприклад, або по електронній пошті, або по фізичної, дуже важливо, щоб ви відповідали на ті запроси зразу або в доступному часі, щоб воно цей процес не затримувався. І ще одне, коли ви готуєтеся посилати всі бумаги, які вас запрошують, то є дуже важливо, щоб ви не висилали до тих пір, поки у вас не буде копії кожної бумаги, яку ви готуєтесь висилати. Із-за того, що бувають випадки, які вони кажуть, що ми не отримали, і у вас не буде можливості цього доказати, то дуже важливо, щоб ви, чи то є електронна, чи то є фізична бумага, щоб у вас були копії всіх бумаг, які ви висилаєте. Так само з вашим паспортом, візою, з усім, щоб у вас була копія, те, що ви висилаєте. В кінці, коли вже прийняли ваш кейс, всі бумаги проходять, у вас буде біометричний апойнтмент. Це для того, щоб зробити відпечатки пальців, зробити фотографії і поставити всі свої підписи. Цей апойнтмент дуже є важливо, щоб його не пропустити. І тому я раніше казала, що є дуже важливо, щоб якщо ви переїдете, якщо є потрібність в тому, що ви переїхали з одної хати на другу, то є дуже важливо, щоб в течение 10 днів ви онлайн зробили, що ви поміняли свою адресу, щоб всі бумаги, які приходять на ваше ім'я, якщо ви навіть переїхали, то щоб ви знали, де вони знаходяться. That's it, Helen.
Very good. Whatever you did, this time we could hear everything very clearly, so it worked. Thank you, Paul. So for all of this information, where did I get this information? All right, please mute your line if you are. Let's see who that is. Somebody who is not muted. Okay, all right, Sergi, welcome. All of this information comes from one website, uscis.gov. That is the website where you can find the forms, you can apply online, or you can print out the forms and you can work on paper and send paper copies. The forms are called I-821, and if you want to apply to work for work authorization, I-765. Filing fees are $50 per person, according to the information that I just read before preparing this presentation, plus $85 per person biometrics fee. Of course, this may be subject to change. Sometimes there is a waiver possible, but it does not apply if you're applying online. Even if you are rejected for TPS, you do not get a refund. Once you pay this fee, it is paid to the USCIS for their review. And also, make sure you're filling out the correct forms. The correct forms are at the very top. I-821 for TPS, I-765 for the work authorization. Do not confuse it with I-821D, which is DACA. It does not apply to you unless you were here as a child. If you're applying online, you will have to create an online account number with uscis.gov. And if you do this, make sure to write down all the codes and numbers they give you because you may not be able to find it again. And of course, all of this information is not all there is to TPS, but this is a start. Paul?
Значить, ще одне важливе. Всі бумаги чи всі аплікації, які ви будете здавати, це все робиться на uscis.gov. І дуже важливо, щоб форми, які ви виповняєте аплікації, це форма I-821 і форма I-765, щоб їх не перепутати, бо є 821D, і то не підходить для вас. То будьте дуже уважні з тими формами. Значить, кошти, які вони беруть, щоб ці аплікації здати, це $50 за людину і $85 біометрична кошта. І це є можливо, що воно поміняється, але поки це є така ціна. Якщо ви не пройшли аплікацію, ці кошти не вертаються вам. Якщо ви робите це не онлайн, то є можливість, що ці кошти вони будуть зміняні. І refunds не будуть, то що вони не повертаються. І важливо, щоб ви, я вже сказав, щоб ви не перепутали з 821D, I-821D, щоб не перепутали. І треба вам налаштувати аккаунт перед тим, як робити аплікацію онлайн, коли ви робите на інтернеті. Це не є все, що залежить в цьому, але це є початок.
Thank you, Paul.
Good.
And finally, I want to say thank you. I'm not done. I'm actually going to show you the forms online, but I just wanted to say thank you for being here every day. Whatever it means, I am praying for your safety, for your new life to be much better, and for the war in Ukraine to end. I want you to please write down my information. I do not speak Russian. I speak Bosnian and Turkish, merhaba or dobro doshli, but Bosnian is not exactly Russian. I can understand some, but it's not the same thing. If you reach out to me, we will find somebody who speaks Russian, or maybe we can communicate in some other ways. I do immigration, and I also do injury. God forbid if you get into an accident, traffic accident or anything like that. I hope that you don't. We don't need anything else to be happening to you and to your life, but that's just life. If it does happen, please let me know, especially Gary County, Kentucky. This is my home too, so I would like to help in any way that I can. Please write down my email address, helen@helenforamerica.com. And find me on Facebook. Now, if you're on Facebook, if you type in American Immigration, KY Injury Lawyer, Helen Bukulmez, you can follow that page because I will continue adding more information there. I will post the link to the form. That way you can go and find it there and you're not wondering how you can find me later on. And Paul, if you think this is not necessary, you don't have to interpret. If you think it is, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and translate. Я ще не завершила свою презентацію, я обов'язково покажу вам ці форми, які заповнюються, але просто хотіла поділитися, це є мій контакт, мене звати Helen. If you could just hold that right there for a second. Мене звати Helen, я є адвокат по імміграції і по аварійних случаях. Будь ласка, запишіть мій контакт, це helen@helenforamerica.com. І в мене є Facebook-сторінка, на якої я буду виставляти любу нову інформацію, яка приходить, я буду виставляти там. Ви можете там знаходити. І хотіла вам ще раз всім подякувати, що ви прийшли послухати, і я часто молюся за Україну. Якщо в нас буде нагода, якщо ви хотіли там якісь питання, я не розмовляю по-російськи, але я думаю, що ми знайдемо перекладача, який би, через якого ми могли би спілкуватися.
Very good. So what I would like to do, check the chat here to see if there are any questions. I think there are a few. Let's see. Okay, so to our friend who's asking about employment authorization, because I don't know about you and I haven't seen your file, if I answered that directly, it would be a very false legal advice. I can tell you in general, this TPS is not just for people who have escaped Ukraine recently. It's for anybody, even if you were here legally before, you can apply for TPS if you qualify, if you're a Ukrainian national, if you were here for those 2 dates that we talked about earlier. If you're eligible, you can apply. Is it possible to apply for a green card after TPS? Unfortunately not. The TPS does not give you the ability to apply for a green card. However, if you get married to an American citizen and it's a real marriage, you are marrying to create a happy family. If you apply for lottery and if you win the green card lottery, if you find employment and if your employer is applying for green card for you, my answer is possible. But TPS alone is not a visa. It's not a status according to some jurisdictions. Therefore, TPS alone is not going to get you a green card unless the Congress passes a law that makes it so, but I do not believe so. So Paul, for purposes of your interpretation, the first one was that even if you were here prior to the war, if you're here, even if you're here legally, you can now apply for TPS and work authorization. And then the second one is TPS alone does not lead to green card. But if you get married or if you find some other way to apply for a green card, then it's case by case basis. And I'm happy to speak with you privately about that.
Well, Helen, it looks like they replied, they understood. I'm just going to go ahead and say it real quick. Значить, було питання, чи після TPS оцього статусу, чи можна отримати грін-карту.
Воно не є один спосіб, який дає грін-карту. Це одна частина з того. Там є багато речей, ще, які входять. Але воно поки вам дає статус того, що ви можете легально працювати в Штатах. Go ahead, Helen.
The first question again, can I apply for EAD with my humanitarian parole, or do I have to apply for TPS? It really depends. Again, I don't want to tell you any legal advice specifically, but in general, I would just compare, does your humanitarian parole last for 18 months? If not, you may benefit from applying for TPS and EAD. But again, because I don't have your file in front of me, I don't want to give specific information and mislead you in some way. Other questions, if you missed a date, if you came here after April 11th, the first part of our presentation focused on that. It would basically go back to any other way. Tourist visa, if you have non-immigrant intent, if you're getting married to an American citizen, if you have family, for example, if you have parents or children or a spouse, and those people are US citizen, then you may have some options. I would simply recommend just reach out to us for a full consultation, and I will make sure to make as much time as possible and to make it as affordable as possible. But these are very specific questions, and as an attorney in the US, I'm only allowed to give general information in a presentation like this. And finally, the update on President Biden's announcement. I believe right now the TPS is going to take care of over 50,000 people. Anything that may be added later, I don't know yet, so we're all watching together, hopefully. Paul, I know this is too much, but whatever you remember from what I said.
Okay, thank you. Значить, перше питання, яке прийшло, чи мені можна оставатися на EAD, вроді би, зараз я перепровірю, чи мені треба ставати на TPS. Залежить від того, яке вам буде працювати ліпше для вас. і це треба було передивитися, що буде лучше для вашої ситуації. А по поводу того, що президент зараз об'явив насчет TPS сьогодні починається, воно должно допомогти 50 тисяч людям. І це можливо, що поміняється, але поки остається так.
Thank you so much. And now, basically, I am going to, let's see if there's another question. Yes, thank you so much. I know I'm trying to be as helpful as possible. Hopefully these general information that I have shared here will help you. But if you want specific consultation, we can definitely make that happen. I'm going to stop sharing this. And let's see if I can start sharing my screen for the form and how I got there. So, Paul, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we see it now.
Okay, very good. Okay, how did I get here? First of all, I want to go back and kind of go to Google and say google.com. And the way we're going to look for this form is going to be temporary protective status for Ukrainians. So as you can tell, a lot of other websites are coming up that are not the official websites. So when you're researching, please don't do that. What I have done here is not good for you. So at the end, add USCIS, temporary protected status for Ukrainians, USCIS. Now you have the first one that comes up. For it to be official, please do not pay any websites or any persons unless this website comes up. Temporary protected status, USCIS. The DHS announces registration process. Click on that. And you're going to see a lot of English here, right? Even for us attorneys, that's a lot of information, but luckily you can see the domain here. It starts with uscis.gov. Please do not go to any other website. They are creating other websites to take your money and just confuse you. So make sure that you have this domain when you find this information. If you scroll down, it's going to talk about Ukraine and Sudan. Clearly, you're going to go to Ukraine. There is more information. If you scroll down, it starts telling you about the forms. So if you see right here, and I'm going to highlight this, these are the forms that you need to use to apply. I do not recommend you apply without assistance of an attorney. But if you cannot afford an attorney, at least please be on this website if you decide to do it yourself. The first form you need to fill out is called, everybody remember, Form I-821. When you click on it, it gives you a lot of good information. You can file online, but I always get leery about filing online because I want to see on paper what I have done. So if you want to file online, you obviously can, but I'm going to go down to forms and document downloads. If you click on it, there is instructions and there is the form. Once you read the instructions, you understand them, go to Form I-821. And the form is going to appear here. This is the only form you should be using to apply for TPS. And Paul, this is going to be way too long, so hopefully this information is being received by those who speak English. For those who don't, at least they can see that this is where they find the information. So I'm going to take a break and let you tell them not to use any website except uscis.gov as they see in the domain name here, because other people are creating a lot of fake websites that come up. So anytime they're searching for it, please do temporary protected status for Ukrainians, USCIS, and do not go to any other website. So I'll let you do some of the interpreting.
Thank you.
Значить, коли ви будете онлайн інтернет, щоб подавати свої аплікації, то є дуже важливо, щоб ви заходите на листок, який під назвою uscis.gov, і це буде саме перше, яке у вас буде в списку, так як я вам показував на Google. Значить, будьте дуже уважні, бо є багато вебсайтів, які виставляють, і якщо просять, щоб ви ставили гроші, то знайте, що державна вебсайт, вона не треба грошей. То будьте дуже уважні і обережні в тому, щоб ви були на правильному вебсайті, який я сказала раніше, uscis.gov. Значить, виходите по тої сторінки, на Google ви виходите донизу, там, де за Україну і за Судан. Звісно, вам тільки потрібно українські аплікації, і нажимаєте на форму, яку я раніше вам казала, I-821. І оце ця форма, яка перед вами зараз.
Okay, thank you. And now what I am going to do is basically go through, this form is in English. If you have an attorney, your attorney is going to fill this out, and your attorney is also going to fill out a form called G28I or G28. You may or may not have an online account number. I don't want to confuse you all with all that, because if the attorney is doing it, he or she will do it anyway. Otherwise, you don't need to fill out anything at the top. As you go through, you need to understand the questions really well. If this is your very first time for applying, you pick first time. If you're re-registering for TPS, you pick that. And then you basically fill out your information. One thing I know coming from Turkey can be date of birth, and sometimes month and a day are switched, so be careful with those. Paul?
Тут я просто показую, якщо от на цій формі спочатку там є які номера. Якщо ви робите це самі, то вам потрібно буде бути уважними. А якщо ви працюєте з адвокатом, то він буде знати, які номера вставляти. І, наприклад, дата народження. Знаючи, що так як я приїхала з Турції, то місяць і рік, і число, вони є різні, то будьте уважні в цьому теж. Go ahead, Helen.
Well, of course, you need to have your documentation such as I-94 to put the numbers in here. And it's basically going to ask you a lot of questions about who you are, where you live, what you look like, your family, your children, your spouse, if you've been in the US before, former spouses, if you were married before. Again, do not listen to anybody who tells you if you have children or if you were married before, you shouldn't apply. People make up all kinds of gossip that is not true. Do not believe anybody, even if they're talking about their own application. Whatever they did for themselves worked for them, or didn't work. But just because it worked for them doesn't mean it will work for you. Your case is very specific to you. You're going to list your children, their mailing addresses, and I cannot stress the address change enough. If you're going to change your address, please make sure to submit address change, and make sure that your old address will still give you what you receive in the mail. Paul?
Значить, будуть багато питань про вас, ім'я, ваша дата народження, звідки ви, коли ви, імена дітей ваших, імена вашої супруги. Якщо були інші супруги вас, і знову хочу вам нагадати, що не затримуйте ніякої з такої інформації, із-за того, що комусь воно може спрацювало, а комусь ні. Но ваша ситуація, вона є особлива в цьому случаї, то не стримуйте ніякої інформації. І
Yeah, basically, there's just a lot of information about your criminal background, personal background, your kids, your address, and things like that.
Да, і буде багато інформації за кримінальну історію, за всі випадки в вашому житті. Теж не стримуйте. І ще раз хочу нагадати, як це важливо, щоб якщо у вас мінялася ваша адреса, то це дуже важливо, щоб на цій формі вона була правильна адреса. Далі.
Thank you. And in part 8, it tells you all the penalties in the instructions about lying, not providing information, or providing false information.
Значить, тут в 8-й часті цієї аплікації тут описуються всі penalties, чи якби наказання, які, якщо ви здержали якусь інформацію чи стримали, які можуть бути послідствия тому.
And on page 10, you start your statement. Whether you can read and understand English, you can pick this one. If you don't, maybe you use an interpreter, then you put the interpreter's information. And then at my request, whoever prepared your information can be put in the next box. Your contact information, interpreter's information, and then finally on page 11, there is applicant's signature and date of signature. And if you haven't used interpreter, you don't have to include any of that.
На 10-й сторінці буде питатися, чи ви розумієте по-англійськи. Якщо ні, то там є з перекладачом. І далі, what was the second part, Helen?
Basically, they sign and they date. If they didn't use an interpreter, they don't have to fill out any of that.
Ага, і ваша розпись і дата внизу. Якщо ви не використовували викладача, то вам не потрібно буде все остальне записувати знизу.
In this section where it's asking you about the preparer, that's either your attorney, authorized representative, or somebody who can actually help you. Anybody who's not an attorney or authorized representatives cannot give you legal advice, and filling out this information may be considered legal advice. So be careful, whoever you put under preparer's information is either a licensed attorney or authorized accredited representative.
Значить, тут буде, хто заповняв цю аплікацію для вас. А якщо то не є адвокат, то будьте уважні, щоб то була людина, яка має дозвіл від вас, і вона вона має авторитет це робити.
Okay, so this is I-821, and you find it on uscis.gov. And once you fill this one out, make sure that all the information is correct and you have read the instructions to include the documents that are required to be sent with this form as well.
І коли ви зробите цю аплікацію ще раз, це є I-821 форма, то як заповните її, будьте уважні, перевірте її, щоб вся інформація в деталях була правильна.
Okay, and now that you have filled out your 821, if you also want to work in the US, you need to file I-765. And it's similarly on uscis.gov. Please do not go anywhere else or buy forms because these forms are free for you to use. So the two forms that we talked about are I-821, I-765. I have already taken so much of your time, so I'm going to try to wrap it up here, but I just wanted to remind the names of the forms and that please do not buy these forms. These are free on uscis.gov.
Ці форми так само, як 821 форма. Якщо ви хочете працювати в Америці, форма 765, вона точно так само заповняється. І ще раз хочу нагадати вам, що то форми є безплатні. І якщо у вас требують кошти, то є неправильні форми. Вони є на цьому веб-сайті, вони є безплатні. І воно точно так само працює. І щоб перепровіряти все.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you to everyone who has shown up here today. If you are in the US, I would like to think that we're very blessed. It could be anybody who is in war, but here America welcomes you. I welcome you. Paul and our church in Gary County welcomes you. Please feel like you're at home here. I will continue praying for Ukraine, and I hope that if it's your desire to go back home, you can soon. If you'd like to stay here and start a new life, perhaps that may be possible at the end of the 18 months. One more question was, I believe, do we expect another TPS to be extended? Right now, we don't know. And another question was, how long is it going to take? Typically, TPS typically takes about 6 months, and work authorization about 3 months. Given COVID and all the things that are going in the world right now, I would like to not guarantee any time period, but those are typical timelines.
І ще раз хочу привітати тих, хто приїхали, хто робить штати вам, що ми молимося і чи оставатися тут, щоб була така можливість, і які поступили як довго часу, щоб ці мови всі пройшли, щоб всі могли залишається.
Thank you, Paul. I know we have allowed our online visitors to ask them questions, and if they still have some, please drop them in the chat box. Paul, is there any question from the audience there in the church?
So the first question was, are these forms printable? And
I didn't get that, Paul. There's a friction there.
So the first question was, are the forms printable? And I believe they are printable, correct?
Yeah, now I'm feeling the pain of our attendees. I didn't get any of that. Can you drop it in the chat maybe? I'm sorry. These are
the first question was, are the forms printable?
Yes, they are very printable, and the way that I showed you, in fact, if you just go to the printer, it's going to print wonderfully. And Paul, second question. I think you're muted.
Correct. Sorry about that. So what was the question is, what are the steps? What are the steps for somebody that had just came here on a humanitarian? What are the steps, the initial steps to take right now to get settled?
So I'm assuming they're asking the legal steps. Basically, depending on whether they qualify for TPS, that's a really good opportunity. TPS is probably a much better option that gives you 18 months, and your humanitarian parole may not have given you that much time. Of course, it's very individual, but in general, I would advise, or I would recommend for everyone to consider applying for TPS if they qualify. So I'm assuming that our guests who are asking these questions have come into the US either on April 11th or before?
Correct. They came before April 11th.
Yes. Then I would basically just start looking at the forms, and if they want to wait for me to come back, for that legal clinic, I can sit down and try to guide everyone. But I would strongly encourage everyone to consider applying for TPS if they qualify, and if they don't have any other way to become citizens, to become green card holders or visa holders.
So the question that just came in on the chat, TPS, will it make any difficulty in prolonging a B1, B2 visa after they get approved for TPS?
I do not believe so. Again, this is another specific question. In general, because there is war in Ukraine right now, if you apply for TPS, it does not change your intent automatically. If you have intent otherwise to live in the US, and if your intent has changed that you want to live in the US, otherwise it may affect it. But just by applying for TPS, if your intent has not changed, then it shouldn't affect it. So just be careful and pay attention to what you do, what you say, what you post as to your intention. But if your intention is to go back to Ukraine after the war is over, TPS alone should not change your ability to renew your B1 or B2.
Значить, відповідь на питання TPS може заважати отриману пролонгації візи B1, B2 після завершення статусу. Значить, вона каже, кожна ситуація є різна, но взагалі вона не повинна заважати, якби продлити візу B1, B2, якби скорочена відповідь.
But be prepared to be asked about it next time you're entering. For example, let's say that you applied for TPS for 18 months and you used that, you were safe here, and after 18 months, you felt safe to go back to Ukraine, the war is over. When you're coming back, just be prepared to answer some questions and articulate that the reason you applied for TPS was because of the war, and your intention hadn't changed, and you always wanted to go back to your country, and your intention stayed non-immigrant. So sometimes you may be questioned. I doubt they will do that these days, very understanding officers. But in general, just be prepared to articulate that the only reason you applied for TPS was the war. After the war, your intention remains non-immigrant.
Ще до цього питання вона каже, що будьте готові для того, що вас будуть задавати ці питання, чого ви продлили і тому подібне. Але вона каже, що зараз вони розуміють, якби ситуацію з війною, то просто взагалі будьте готові, щоб давати відповідь на те, що чому ви продлили і яка ваша була наміри.
Okay, very good. I don't see any other question in the chat. Any questions from the congregation at the church?
Oh, just a second here. We've got people talking. Є якісь ще питання? So we have a question about when somebody receives TPS status when they go through. Does that include medical or anything like that?
Unfortunately not. TPS is designed to allow you to live in the US and to work if you apply for 765, as we discussed. But comparatively, the US is more of a capitalist system. I think it doesn't come with any medical or any assistance, but we are very blessed with our churches, with our organizations. If you ask for information, and I'm sure Paul and our pastor in Gary County is going to post more information about this, but there might be organizations helping immigrants with their medical needs. And also we have several different programs that you may qualify if you need medical help. But unfortunately, TPS alone does not give you any medical or any other assistance.
Okay, thank you. Helen?
Okay, I think I see Sergey's question. If you applied for work permit and you already have your work permit for 12 months, you do not have to apply for work permit again when you're applying for TPS unless it runs out. So if you already have a work permit, you don't have to apply for it again, especially if you received it, if it's in the process. But if you apply for TPS and if you want to extend it later, you may need to apply for a work permit later, Sergey. Does that make sense?
Якщо у вас вже була віза якщо ви отримали вже дозвіл працювати на вашій гуманітарній візі, то вам не треба ще раз подавати аплікацію. Тільки тоді, коли вона, якщо вона вже кінчається, то ви можете ще раз. А так як воно є, воно може залишатися.
Okay, very good. Again, all of this information is general, and I hope that you will be safe. You will find that you're welcome in America, and I hope that we'll be able to help you. I am planning to be in Gary County at least early May to see if I can help some of you in person. And I'm also going to do another Zoom conference similar to this and answer more questions, share more information as we learn. But I may not be able to be there in person or on Zoom, so you can always find more information that I'll be sharing on my Facebook page. And the Facebook page is American Immigration KY Injury Lawyer Helen Bukulmez.
Значить, ще раз хочу вам всім подякувати. І коли я вернуся з Техасу, я буду рада зустрітися з вами і лічно з вами працювати. І ще раз буду робити такий Zoom-мітинг, якщо ще комусь потрібно буде. І нагадую ще раз за свою Facebook-сторінку, на якої ви можете знайти всі новини, які поступають по цих питаннях. They're asking, how much longer are you going to be in Texas?
Well, I'm here for work, so I'll be coming back sometime next week, and I would like to come back to Gary County as soon as possible. So hopefully I'll see you all soon.
Very well, thank you.
You're welcome. And lastly, I want to add that all of us working really hard to create resources in Russian, in Ukrainian. I wish I spoke better Bosnian. Dobrodošli is not enough. At the same time, English is not my first language either. I came here when I was 25 years old, and with God's grace, with patience, with a lot of hard work, I learned English. I want to learn Russian too one day. What I would like to say from one immigrant to another is the more you learn English, the more resources, the more help, the more friendships, the more information, the more opportunity you find. I know this is a very difficult time, and again, my prayers are with you. But if there is any way you can start slowly learning some English, I think it's going to benefit your life. And I'm going to start learning Russian at the same time.
Саме що вам сказати, ще раз хочу вам подякувати, що ми молимося за вас. Саме найважливіше, що так само, як я, англійська не є моя перша мова. Я по-боснійськи говорю і я так розумію, що турецьку. Але з Божою допомогою каже, що вона приїхала сюди в 25 років і вивчила язик. І хоче всім, хто переїжджає, хто є щоб то був їхній пріоритет, щоб хоч чуть-чуть взяти англійської мови, так як можливості на проживання тут збільшуються, коли є англійська мова.
And I'd like to thank Paul. I'd like to thank our pastor in Garrett County for making this possible. Thank you to all our attendees. Please stay in touch. We will overcome all these challenges together. One day, hopefully soon, peace will come to Ukraine, and I pray for that.
Хочу ще раз всім подякувати Павлу за перекладання, церкві, брата пастору. And one more time, Pastor Peter is asking if we could say a prayer of thanks to the Lord for this opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Бог благословляє всім устрояє, Боже. Ти устрояєш судьби людей на землі, Боже. Наших друзів, які прибули до нас, Господі. Ти бачиш їхні переживання, Господі. Ті невідомі вопроси, які возникають, Боже. Ти сильний, Господі, розрішити їх, Боже, щоб мали вони спокій на серці і спокійне життя тут. Благослови Хелен, Боже, яка, Господі, добровільно погодилася, Боже, допомагати тим, хто нуждається в цьому. Благослови її бізнес, благослови її сім'ю, благослови її здоров'я, дай успіх в праці і духовно, Господі Боже, збагати її дарами неба Боже. Во ім'я Ісуса Христа я благословляю, Господі, друзів наших, які сьогодні нуждаються в помощі, Боже. Ти вийди на зустріч, Господі, яви славу Твою і милость Твоя да буде над ними, Боже. За все ми щиру подяку складаємо Тобі, Бог Отець, Син і Дух Святий. Амінь.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, and I hope that peace will come to our world soon. And I hope that I get to meet each of you very soon as well. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Helen, so much. God bless you.
Absolutely. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.